so I am an atheist. I was diagnosed with lupus a couple years ago, and I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit, if that's okay.
Yes.
Because I know that a lot of people, and one of the earlier callers was talking about how hell and all that kind of stuff, and I mean, my diagnosis is not good of the type of lupus that it is, and of just how it's attacking my body. And part of the reason for that is when I was younger, and, out in Idaho, we're kind of a lot of isolated communities, and there's a lot of extremist fundamentalist groups, I guess, and we're one of the states where you're allowed to not give your kids medical. You're dependent.
I understand. The parents aren't required
medical care.
Okay, gotcha. Okay,
yeah,
we understand.
And so that's kind of what happened when I was growing up. And by the time I was able to get treatment, my body was kind of wrecked by that, and I also struggle with the whole hell concept too, because when I was religious, what is the purpose of me being sick? Does God want me sick? And the fact that I'm getting treatment, does that mean that I'm considered broken because God wanted me sick in the beginning?
Right.
Or is the fact that I can function now, does that mean that then why bother? If the off chance was that they're just kind of hoping that I would eventually get better, why have me be born in Idaho? For goodness sake, I mean, it's kind of a disaster over here. But it's the idea that religion helps with coping with death. I don't know. I just kind of wanted to say, with all the people who are afraid of hell and things like that.
Right.
And even as someone who, I don't exactly have a lot of time left. But it's so much better with science. It's so much better on our side. Because we are alone out there, and just helping, being able to help each other.
I think that you're bringing up a good points. I have a friend who does psychiatric treatment, and they are the mental health professional. And one of the things that they had an issue with was incorporating prayer into therapy, which is something that is a big push going on in the UK with regard to psychiatric care. And one of the issues that they dealt with, or one of their concerns, the ethical concerns, was exactly what you're describing, this idea of what happens when you get the therapist involved as well with the religious rituals with the patient. And instead of having them get their religious support elsewhere if they want it, and have the treatment be evidence-based and medicine, if you incorporate the two and the therapy fails, what happens to the patient? Does the patient then say, God doesn't want me to get help? Because now you've got the therapist is inherently tied to the religious view. And you have this judgment, the self-judgment, and that's what the other psychiatrist was arguing. He was saying, how much worse would this be for the patient if they believed that not only the psychiatrist couldn't help them, but that God was refusing, or that they weren't worthy of being helped, or that they weren't supposed to be getting help? Like, what could this do to their treatment?
Yeah, I'm actually a speech therapist, and I work a lot with patients with stroke and traumatic brain injury. There's a lot of the injuries out here by the time they get to the hospital, because we have to fly them in and blah blah blah. They're usually it's usually pretty bad as well. And I see that with a lot of my patients, especially if they're Hutterites or if they're fundamentalist Mormons. If they don't get better in with the month, and that very rarely happens with strokes and traumatic brain injuries, and their family starts blaming them, they start getting isolated. But yeah, I'm one of those religious people who still, I not still afraid of the help, but I'm still afraid of the whole. I'm fighting the whole. It's my fault that I'm sick. You know that.
It sounds to me like it might be your parents' fault that you're sick. I mean,
yeah.
That's how I interpret your story.
But it's a sign that the family's cursed. You know, it's a sign that God was, at least how I was grown. I was, you know, that's
cursed with bad judgment, and you know, I mean, this is horrible that you are on the pay end of this mess. Yeah. That the idea that you are paying for someone else's religious views. I mean, I hate to hear this. But at the same time, I'm glad you're telling this story, because we talk about the idea of separation of church and state. For example, when you're talking about some benefits of I want to say the atheist culture, not all atheists obviously subscribe to the same things, but in general, we're going to have a better view of autonomy than a church that believes that you must devote yourself entirely to God, and that's simply the authority saying that. So at least in the atheist community, you have the option of meeting people who value your autonomy, which would be that even if you're a child, you're not property. And that means that if someone's not getting you medical care and you need that medical care and you're suffering for it, I think there's probably a lot of people within the atheist community who would come to bat for you to say, we agree that this person should get care, or that their parents should, you know, there needs to be some intervention here in this family situation, because this is an individual and a human being and a person, and this is a citizen, even though they're a minor.
Thank you.
I don't know what I don't know that it helps, but it's definitely
it does. It
my
does,
view.
Definitely. Thank you. And I agree. It's something that we need to work more and better on with this country. But I'm gonna let you guys go. So
okay.
Yeah. Before you go, Christine, as you were saying that, I'm so sorry to hear about just such a situation. But do you have support where you are? Do you have like a support network that you're leaning on for just your own mental stability and do you have something there?
Not in real life, so to speak. But I have I've been going through the secular therapist project and recovering from religion, and then there's some support groups online.
Good.
Okay, good. That's what I was going to suggest.
I'm glad that you took advantage of those things and availed yourself of resources. I'm glad those resources are out there.
Thank you. And it was thrilled when I found. But yeah, I'm going to let you guys take some other callers. But thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your call.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Oh, that was a tough one.
You know.
My heart goes out to Christine.
You know,
and I can't. I mean, the anger that I felt listening to her story, just at the idea of somebody having to suffer, and I want to say, you know, for the rest of their life, but it's like what she's describing is an early death,
right?
And a very early death based on somebody else's beliefs
and decisions of.
That she had no control over.
Right.
I mean, she had no options here, and this is completely messed up.
But I'm glad she found support. I wanted to ask that right before she got out.
No, I'm glad you did, because I didn't think of that, and you did, and I was like, that's a great question. So I'm really glad you said it, because I didn't go down that line. But that's you, because you're the volunteer guy, so you're the support guy. So no, that's definitely your strong suit.